Welcome to episode 214 of the Microsoft Cloud IT Pro podcast, recorded live on January 22nd, 2021. This is a show about Microsoft 365 and Azure from the perspective of IT pros and end users, where we discuss a topic or recent news and how it relates to you. In this episode, we continue along the theme of news as we talk about dueling backgrounds and planner plans, some resources to help you administer your Microsoft 365 tenant, a set of new videos for ISVs and others to learn more about Azure Governance, and the Microsoft Lists app becoming available on iOS. GoGo Gadgets. I don't need any gadgets, I don't think. Well, I do need gadgets, but I don't need any GoGo Gadgets.
You need gadgets. MagSafe is coming back. Haven't you heard?
I have heard. I am excited. I miss MagSafe. Maybe my nervousness of plugging my laptop in on the couch with kids around will go away. Or I could just go buy the M1 and get 20 hours of battery life and it wouldn't matter.
Well, it stands to reason that should you wait, you are going to have MagSafe and an M1. Imagine that.
And possibly USB-A and an SD card, although those I find a little harder to believe.
You will not have USB-A.
Okay, good, because I already invested in my dongles. I don't want my dongle investment to go to waste.
Whatever happens, there will be no USB-A.
What about the touch bar?
I would say there will probably be no USB-A. But anyway, yeah, there's some exciting rumors out there about Mac stuff. So if you're into Macs, which I know at least like one or two people out there are, apparently they're going to throw out all the garbage that Johnny Ive put together for the last couple of years of his career and go back to maybe like bezels that don't cut your wrists on, at least on the the base around the keyboard. Touch bar might go away, which actually, like in and of itself, not a bad thing. The touch bar is kind of there. But Apple clearly hasn't invested in it over the years.
No.
Like, there's been no meaningful updates to functionality or anything there. It's just kind of like there to be there. I don't know. So, yeah.
To be fair, I don't know what functionality you would add to it, though, either, right? Like,
well, I mean, who knows?
What could you do with it?
The thing runs a little mini Apple Watch inside of it. Like maybe there are opportunities to do some other stuff. Maybe you could find ways to give haptic feedback within it. Could you like potentially, instead of having like one touch bar, could you have I don't know, two touch bars,
dueling touch bars,
and do different things along the way? Yeah, I don't know. We shall see. Would it make more sense to have the touch bar at a different place on the keyboard, right? Like do you want to like rethink the way keyboards work, and did it have to be the function row? You still need a function row and maybe have a touch bar too. Like, do you have room to do that? Right. I don't know. All sorts of interesting possibilities there.
Yeah,
turn your glass trackpad into the touch bar, right? Like put like a little mini operating system inside your glass trackpad.
Maybe. No, I won't say that. Yeah, I don't. I'm rather impartial about that. I like the two things I use. I use the volume slider and I use the screen brightness slider on the touch bar. I kind of like those, but that's about it. Yeah. But to your point, could you do something like that somewhere else? So you still get more of those fine-tuned controls on a touch bar and a little slider, but not the full touch bar. Maybe put like a little clock on the touch bar and have it a smaller... something or other, like replace your F10, F11, and F12 keys, because whoever uses those three, right? Everybody uses like F5 to F10.
Well, I mean, I never used them as F keys on a Mac. They were always the specialized functions of like volume up, volume down, but you knew where that button was, right? If I want to go change my volume now, well, I'd have to unclamshell my Mac. Like, all right, let's dig it out. Let's open it up. And, maybe there's another problem with the touch bar.
But Somebody did say they just skip over all the Mac stuff on the podcast and then go right to where we actually talk about Microsoft Cloud stuff. So yes, there are those people that really don't care about our Apple stuff.
You're going to have to put some chapter markers in or
something like that. So you mentioned 2 touch bars and dueling touch bars. You know what else can be dueling in Microsoft 365?
I have a sense for it, and Tony Redmond went out and wrote it up.
Yes, your planner intelligent backgrounds. I mean, the planner intelligent backgrounds were enough in and of themselves for us to spend a few minutes on, because I've maybe found one that doesn't hurt my eyes yet. But then Tony brought up the fact that these are not uniquely yours, and any member of a planner plan team, sure, we'll call it a planner plan team, anybody that's a member of that planner plan can change the background. So, I mean, if you get is everybody, right? Because if you're going to use Planner to manage tasks, you kind of have to be a member to be able to modify tasks and update tasks and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where maybe hindsight is 2020, right? And you can kind of look back and say, how would most people use a customization around background in their work tasking? And I think that's probably the way a lot of people view Planner is. It might be associated with a team or something like that, but ultimately, like when you go into Planner, unless you're the boss who's running everybody else's stuff, like you might be like an IC who is assigned tasks and has to take a look at them. So it's your planner, right? Like yep. it's your plan. So you're going to look at that and go like, ooh, I can change the background. So you click and change the background, and then Ben comes in and goes, ooh, now my eyes are bleeding. Well, I didn't know the backgrounds could change. Let me go change the background. So you go change the background because you're like, well, it doesn't work for me. But now what works for you might not work for the next person, because the planner plan background setting is a setting that affects everyone that's in there. It's not an individual like per user thing, and it can't be locked by a group owner. So group owners can't say that for this planner plan, this is the background, or you can't customize the background, whatever it happens to be.
Right. And the funny thing is, it's not like, not the planner team, but the Microsoft 365 team as a whole hasn't done something like this before, because you can customize your theme like an Outlook and the top ribbon, and you have an option within Microsoft 365 to let your users customize that to take the default one. So they've kind of already thought through that process of, hey, we're going to have a globally assigned one. We're going to let users change it to make it uniquely theirs. Why not extend that same type of functionality down to Planner, where admins can maybe dictate one that's a default for the whole plan, but then if a member goes in and changes it, it's uniquely theirs. The functionality already exists within other theming areas. Let's just do it in Planner too.
Yes. Yeah. And then, oh man, I understand that design is opinionated, and everyone has opinions about things. I don't hear anybody out there saying like, look at these amazing backgrounds that are in Planner. Like usually every article about like, oh, Planner has backgrounds in it now, says, what were they like thinking when they put some of these out there? They are loud, distracting. Some are just like bad. I would have loved to like, who in the room sold that as like, this is going to be the default set of hero images that are going to go out with our functionality for backgrounds for Planner.
Well, and I want to know how they pick them, right? Because these are intelligent backgrounds based on the name of the Planner plan. So based on whatever names, there's some algorithmic process running in the background to intelligently select
just a little bit of AI,
a background.
Just a little bit.
Well, they had to get I'm going to get myself in trouble if I don't be careful what I'm going to say about that. but it intelligently picks the background, right? So you get this selection. You don't have any option to upload your own or pick your own images. You kind of get the default 8 or so that are intelligently generated. But yet every time you go change the background, you get a new set of them. So it's like an intelligent randomness. It's not using the same AI algorithm, or maybe AI is learning when you go select a new one that you didn't like the other ones. It's just kind of a bizarre... To me, it's kind of a bizarre way to even assign backgrounds for Planner, to not let people just pick like, I want a solid color, or I want to upload this image. We're just going to randomly give you these AI generated.
Yeah, you would think that maybe that's the place to start, or pull through the themes from other places, like from the sweep bar or from Outlook, whatever it happened to be.
Yeah. Anyways, we don't need to keep beating that dead horse. That's just been an interesting one. And if you want to go see a whole bunch more, just go look on Twitter and you'll see all kinds of interesting conversations.
Yeah, I imagine that one improves over time, as most things should.
So one other one I wanted to quick mention from Tony Redmond, he's been busy apparently to kick off the new year, is he has a GitHub repo that he just posted about, where over the years, he writes a lot of PowerShell scripts, specifically more IT Pro based. And he has recently gone off and created an Office 365 for IT Pros GitHub repo that has a bunch of scripts he's created over the years that are available for you to go try. He does put some disclaimers on there. Probably for his own safety, they're not production scripts. So if you go run these and break your production environment, don't blame him for it. You should still do your due diligence, look through the scripts, make sure you understand what they're doing, how it's gonna affect your environment, all of that. But there is a repo out there now on GitHub that we will link to that. I don't know, I think he has like 65 different scripts or so out there that you can go take a look at, leverage, follow that, as I'm sure he'll add more to it as well over time.
Yep. So a lot of those scripts are associated with they have an evergreen kind of book, Office 365 for IT pros. So it's Tony and a bunch of other contributors write to that. And the cool thing about that book is, like, if you buy it in digital format, it is updated on a monthly cadence. So every month, if there's new updates to go in, or if things change in services, like, they go back and kind of fix those and put them in context of current times. And a lot of these scripts come out of that book as well. Like they're the examples from that book. So I would expect, or my guess would be that this is kind of a maintained resource that stays evergreen as well, and gets augmented and added to. So yeah, there's definitely some good stuff out there.
Yeah, go check it out. And now we'll kind of get into more of a main topic. This is one you sent over to me today, along the lines, I'm trying to work in my segues here of resources to help you get going. However, this is not Microsoft 365. This is an Azure resource that you turned me on to this morning, and it is a site that has some Azure Governance for ISVs. So
yes, so this is a little video series, and just to kind of like take a step back, when you're learning about the cloud, be it like a SaaS service like Microsoft 365 or Azure, AWS, Google, whatever it happens to be, there's a ton of different resources out there. So you have to find the resources that work for you. This is like, and this is another new set of resources that has come out and augments existing resources. So when I say like Azure Governance for ISVs, this isn't the definitive source of information for Azure Governance for ISVs. This is just a source of information, right? Like certainly there's still docs and all those other kinds of things, which you should probably go and view. There's other learning resources out there, be they Microsoft Learn, Plural Sites, Cloud Gurus, things like that. But anywho, if you like videos about, and that's kind of your preferred way to sit down and watch things, particularly in like shorter form. So when I say shorter form, like not an hour and a half video, but more like 15, 20 minutes kind of thing, to understand the state of the world and where you can go to learn more, you might want to go and check these out. So if you are an ISV, so an ISV is an independent software vendor, right? Like you build, market, and sell software solutions, and potentially you host those solutions on Azure. Maybe you build those solutions on top of Azure. Maybe you're like building a SaaS product, or you just use Azure resources and be it compute, networking, storage, AI services, web, whatever, as part of your business. Maybe you want to just go like check these out. It'll take you, I said, like about an hour to get through all of them, and maybe go read some follow-up articles and things like that. But ways to think about how to organize your resources as an ISV. So for governance for any organization, how you're going to organize things and how they're going to kind of lay out, like what's your taxonomy for resources in Azure, because there is this natural hierarchy of tenants and management groups, and then subscriptions and resource groups and resources underneath them, and there's potentially limits there, like how many resource groups can I have in a subscription, how many resources can I have in a resource group, all things that you need to think about. But how do you think about them differently if you're an ISV? Well, go watch a video on organizing resources for ISVs. There's also a quick video. I think it's like 16, 17 minutes on policies, initiatives, and blueprints. So once you figured out how you're going to organize your resources, how are you going to make sure they stay organized? How do you start to think about automation within your environment, and not just automation in the creation of resources, but potentially automation all up, right? Like if I'm going to create a blueprint, like maybe that blueprint locks resources in my environment so that they can't move around, or it locks them so they can't be deleted by another person. I'm an ISV. I just built my new solution, and it relies on this Azure web app and this Azure storage account to do all the things, and this Azure function to do all the things it needs to do. If those all disappear, very bad day. You could configure resource locks, but why not lock it with a blueprint just to have that kind of extra step in there? So things like that. And then there's a quick little summary, and again, you got all the follow-up to go read articles and things like that.
Yeah, this is a nice little resource. And they do say right in there too that this content is certainly going to be helpful for you, even if you're not an ISV. That's the lens they're looking at as they created these videos and walked through these resources, is from that ISV lens. So like you said, it's going to be ISV focused. They're going to refer to ISVs. They're looking at it through the lens of ISVs. But for anybody that's organizing resources, setting up policies, initiatives, blueprints, this is going to be helpful. You're going to get something from this. And I do like that they're 15 minutes, 16 minutes. It makes it a little bit more digestible when you can just quick pop on one of those while you're eating lunch or have a few minutes between meetings or something. Yeah.
And if you're a video learner for some of this and you're looking for content from Microsoft, from like mechanics and the product groups and things like that, and specifically in the areas of governance and deployments as well, because I think that's a big part of it is how you automate those and put all those together. There's a YouTube channel out there called Azure Deployments and Governance, which is maintained tons of videos, and they've got things on like Bicep, which is kind of that new construct for like ARM Azure Resource Manager. Like, hey, this is the next step in the evolution of those. If you're interested in just ARM templates in general, like, hey, I just watched this video on Azure ISV governance, and it said this stuff about blueprints. I want to learn more about those. There's a bunch of videos out there about how to create blueprints and things like that. So I will put that in the show notes as well.
Perfect. Sounds good. Any other Azure news you want to chat about? I have a whole bunch of Microsoft 365 stuff from this week.
We can do Microsoft 365.
Do you want to dive back into that?
Yeah.
Which one would you like me to bring up first?
Oh, let's talk about lists, because there's been some fun stuff in lists, right? We've got a new iOS app out there.
Yes, we do. I downloaded it. I tried it, I think. I downloaded it and I went to log in. But there is the Lists iOS app is finally out there. And it works. And I haven't played with it a ton yet. I just pulled it up on my phone to play with it. It works pretty well, except that this list does not exist. I just opened a list that didn't exist. It shows all of your lists. It shows all the icons. I mean, the UI is going to be fairly straightforward. You have the ability, you kind of have the home screen in the app to go view all of your lists. You can create new lists from it, and you can see My Lists, which are pulling those lists from your OneDrive for Business site. Browsing through them, they're lists, right? SharePoint lists, especially some of them I work with, they do tend to be wider. Apparently, I just turned off my video. I hit a button. So it's a little bit different on a phone because, you can only get like 2 or 3 columns on a phone because your phone is much more portrait. So you do have to do a lot of scrolling right and left if you're trying to browse through a list. Like I just pulled up, like at my incidents list, I get 2 columns and then there's like another 10 of them over to the right. So if you have, that long, wide list, you have to do a little scrolling. It does support flipping it to landscape mode.
Yep.
And then you get 4 columns instead of 2 columns. But then you only get like 3 rows. But if you do a lot with lists, if you are getting into these Microsoft lists, definitely worth checking out the app because it is going to probably give you a little bit better experience than typically. I think you could still get to them through the SharePoint app. But that was geared a little bit more towards pages, towards news articles, towards more of that other SharePoint stuff. Where this app is focused on 100% on those lists. And they do only have the iOS one right now. Android, I was digging through some comments and discussions about it. It sounds like Android is still maybe at least a few weeks out. They did not give any timeline for the Android app other than it is coming later this year.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything specific about timelines for that either.
So take that time frame as you will.
Yeah, you still get the website, right? You can always sign in a mobile browser if you have to. Then pinch. But exactly. if you're dependent on these solutions on the go, this is good stuff, right? You go out and you said, I'm going to deploy the deploy and configure the asset tracker list. And now you can, send your techs out into the field who actually have to do like physical inventory management for all those assets. They could just pull it right up on their phone without having to potentially deal with the website or things like that. Should make data entry or even data viewing a little bit quicker.
Yep. And as they, another part of this too is eventually you'll be able to take these offline, right? So eventually you'll have offline lists. This will work with, I think the code name for it was Project Nautilus or Nucleus. Nope, it was Nucleus. Nautilus is the boat. Nucleus is the list project name. eventually this will work with offline lists once those become available, and you'll be able to now use like the Lists app to work with these Microsoft lists offline, reconnect to the internet, sync everything back up. So like you said, on the go, working with lists, offline support, it'll all continue to roll out, evolve, improve over the course of 2021.
Yeah. You know what else is really cool about lists? You can have some list templates show up in Teams and some that only show up in Microsoft lists.
Oh, you brought it up.
I just wanted to see what you do.
What?
I just wanted to see how you'd react.
How I would react to this one. So this was a Twitter post that we can link to, and be sure to read the whole discussion. Essentially, someone noticed that, hey, if I go create a list from Teams, I have, I think, 11 list templates.
Yeah, and it's 10 or 11, and you've got what, like 13 or 14 if you come through.
If you come through Teams. So if you come through Teams, and if you come through just Microsoft Lists or from SharePoint, because you have the same interface if you're creating a new list in SharePoint in the My Content or Content, site content, you have a lesser number. And there was some debate going on Twitter about why Teams has more than SharePoint. And at first there was some speculation, maybe it was because there was a extra reliance on some features in Teams somehow for the lists, but that didn't quite, like, I could not resolve that in my head. So I asked, I was like, okay, someone explain this to me because I need help. Comes back, no, there isn't a dependence on Teams. It just makes more sense for these lists. They tend to be a little bit more collaborative type lists. So I think one was like an issues tracker, a patients list, and I can't remember what the other one was, but it tended to be a list that maybe you wouldn't necessarily work on it with yourself. It made more sense to have it as part of a team that would collaboratively be contributing and working on this list. So therefore, they decided to make it available just through Teams and not through the SharePoint or the My Lists. One workaround to this I did find is if you do have a team and you go create one of these lists, it now lives within the SharePoint site associated to that team. You can go into Microsoft Lists, you can go into SharePoint, click to create a new list, create it from an existing list, browse to the associated SharePoint site, select that patients list, incidents list, whatever one of those three are, click create, it creates it in the SharePoint site. You can create it in the My List, so in your OneDrive for Business site, and it all seems to work fine. So there wasn't really any dependencies there. It seems like just more of a choice by the product team to, hey, we're going to just make these three available in Teams for now. Maybe they'll eventually come everywhere. Who knows?
Yeah. And I think the original context for it was, if you set your tenant up in a way where you want all lists to be available to everyone, the context for where that list is instantiated, at least the first time, really matters, because now you'll see these extra options in Teams that aren't available over in SharePoint. But once it's created, it's still a SharePoint list. A Microsoft list, which is a SharePoint list.
A list is a list is a list.
A list is a list that you can interact with through SharePoint, through the fancy mobile app that just got released. So there's no impacts there. It's really more about instantiation and how that resource is created the first time.
Yep. And it was interesting. So this Twitter thread kind of took two different directions. There was that direction. There was also a direction that is just kind of something good to be aware of, is Stephen Collier pointed out. He's like, patients list is kind of a trick, because if you go select patient list, it gives an example, and it would have, like, it creates a medical record number, ID, a name, birth date, all of this. Well, you still want to be careful, because if you're starting to create patient lists within your Office 365 environment now, it's not like you can just ignore all the HIPAA and PII stuff. And Microsoft 365 is fully HIPAA compliant, PII compliant, but you still have to do the work to make your environment HIPAA compliant and PII compliant. You still need to worry about things like DLP and sensitive information and patient-doctor confidentiality. So you also, as you do this patient list or anything in your environment, it's just kind of that awareness of just because these environments meet all these compliance standards doesn't mean you can just go do anything you want to in them and store anything you want to in there without doing your due diligence as a company to enable features, turn on features, make sure everything is set up in a way to protect that information.
Yeah. So like all things, right? Like you bought this product, it doesn't, just because you bought it doesn't negate the need to implement governance and everything else around it.
Yep. So there were two, yes, that
yeah.
Twitter thread took two different
I understand
directions.
that concern that saying like, oh, you created a list called patients and, is patients really HIPAA compliant? Like, I'm sorry, like that's your business, right? Like if you're deploying Microsoft 365 and you don't want people to configure that stuff, then you have to train them and teach them that. Like Microsoft can't teach you to do that.
Right. But I can kind of see the point of why would you use patients as a list template? That one.
Well, because there's entire verticals within Microsoft, right?
Within
like
the
Microsoft
healthcare.
Microsoft has a bunch of lines of business. I mean, there's even, the whole, I forget what it's called, but there is like a Microsoft for healthcare thing. Like, it's the Microsoft Cloud for healthcare.
Okay.
So there is definitely an entire part of the world that goes out and does these things, right? So you go, oh, I'm in manufacturing, I don't need a patients list. Sure, but now we're back to that everything for everyone solution that is Microsoft 365. So if you don't want it or you don't need it there, then please teach your users that they shouldn't
don't use that
stuff.
Well, and I've worked with clients too that do store patient information in SharePoint. It just, I don't know. That one as a template was a little interesting to me. It just didn't seem to go along with all the other templates that were out there. And maybe that's why. Maybe they needed a template to apply to that healthcare industry a little more.
Yeah, could be.
Someone must really want to get a hold of me. My phone's rang like 3 or 4 times while I've been sitting here. So, yes, lists. Always interesting, continuing to grow and expand and evolve in this year.
So we probably have time for one more Teams one just to get it out of the way. Did you see that notifications from your Yammer communities are now available in Microsoft Teams?
I'm leaving. Yes. Okay. Is that all we were going to say about that one?
Well, I mean, it's going to allow you to take your corporate communications to the next level, Ben.
Yes, I have lots of very intriguing Yammer conversations with myself throughout the day.
Yeah. You need to go anyway. If you go out there, you install.
I didn't even pull this article up because I was going to avoid it. You're just causing problems today.
But if you go out and you install the Communities app, because everybody knows where that is, and it hasn't been locked down by the tenant administrators in their tenants that they work day to day in. It's the Yammer app, right? It's Communities powered by Yammer. Blah blah blah. It's in the Teams app store. But if you go and install that app and then sign into Yammer, then you'll start to see things like org-wide announcements that come out in Yammer will show up inside of your activity feed inside of Microsoft Teams. So that way you see the activity feed on your desktop, mobile, and web. And you don't have to go over to the Yammer app to see those things anymore. But you'll still get a lot of notifications from the Yammer app because it's going to send you all the emails and all the other things that it does.
Yeah, I installed this app a while ago. But again, being my company being the way it is, I do not use Yammer a lot. I'm part of a few communities as an external user. But even then, it's kind of hit or miss on whether these groups for discussion end up in Yammer or Teams. And it looks like the Communities app is still only applicable to my company. So I don't see a way for me to like install the Communities app in Teams, in my environment at least, and then go access all of these other external communities I'm a part of. It is just communities specific to my organization.
Yeah, I haven't seen a way to flip to like external networks or other networks or anything like that.
But yes, this is very much a thing now. You can Yammer on in Teams.
Yeah, you can Yammer on Yammer in Teams.
You can Yammer on Yammer in Teams. Or you can get Teams notifications about Yammer notifications in Teams.
Mm-hmm. Only if I could get Teams to open.
That you shouldn't have clicked the personal. Oh, no, you didn't say you clicked personal. It just broke.
No, I did click personal, but I wasn't supposed to see personal. Anywho, if you're ever signed into Teams and you go to the little drop down to change orgs and you see personal up there and it's not supposed to be there because you're not in the type of account that should have access to a personal tenant, don't click it because you'll never get Teams open again.
You'll never get
all sorts of nice nasty errors in the web client.
Okay, I'm going to keep going with one other thing because this made me think of something. Have you ever gone to portal.office.com and been signed into your personal tenant instead of your org tenant, or your org tenant instead of your personal tenant?
No.
Okay, so
can I go to portal.office.com and like in an MSA? What does that do?
So it takes you to like a Office 365 for home. It essentially does a redirect to www.office.com.
Let me try. Oh, yeah. Well, it says I can't sign in with a personal account. So it doesn't.
Maybe you need to pay for it. Oh, or maybe.
Oh, I do. I have a paid Office 365.
Just a minute. Let me see which one this is. This might be my business one that's tied to.
Oh, you have like an easy ID?
No, this is very much my personal one. So you can't open www.office.com with your personal Office 365 account?
I can. You told me to go to portal.office.com.
Well, so technically it'll redirect you to office.com.
Yes. So I can go to office.com with my personal account. Yes.
So do you see up at the top there where you have your query string, your question mark auth equals 1? Mm-hmm. Do you have that in yours?
Yep.
Switch it to auth equals 2.
Okay. Auth
and you should 2. Jump over to your work one.
Well, no.
Or whatever one you're signed in with, if you were signed in with 2.
Well, it won't sign in because I was signed in with an MSA and now it wants me to pick an account that is an org ID.
Yeah, so if you're logged in, because I've had problems before where I'll go to portal.office.com and it'll sign me in with one or the other, and I want to flip back and forth because both accounts are technically signed in within that browser session. I used to be battling, how do I get flipped over to my org account or how do I get flipped back to my personal account? And as I was playing with it one day, I discovered that you can just flip that number between auth 1 and auth 2. And I don't know if you can go up to 3 and 4. I don't think so. I think it's only 1 and 2 for personal and work. But just by flipping that in the query string, you can jump back and forth between your 2 signed in accounts.
Mm-hmm. I see.
So you don't need to sign out and sign in or sign out.
I thought it was going to be like this super special thing, but
no.
Then all it was a
it was just a way to flip between 2 accounts if you're signed in with both of them.
All right, you got me. I haven't had enough coffee for this.
Yeah, that's it. Now we can go get more coffee and enjoy our Fridays. Alexa's telling me I have a calendar. I need to go focus.
Oh, I thought it was mine yelling at me. But
nope, it's mine yelling at me. Apparently, I need to adjust my quiet time hours on Fridays to start later.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, we'll go enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the rest of your Friday.
All right.
And we will talk to you next week. Yep. Thanks, Scott.